The unavailability of energy in Sub Saharan Africa contributes greatly to the extreme poverty of the region. This energy poverty creates major health, societal, and political problems for the population. Smoke inhalation is the fourth most common cause of death. There are few vocational options outside of agriculture, and opportunities for education are limited. This documentary will explore two potential macro scenarios. One, which considers a trend towards worldwide protectionism, and another one, which considers continued development of free, open markets. The question we will be asking is, how could off-grid technologies impact energy poverty sub-Saharan Africa over the next 20 years?
Under protectionism, we see a fundamental focus on internal markets. Governments will use a variety of regulatory mechanisms like tariffs, quotas, and subsidies to control trade in an often misguided attempt to further their own interests. A shift into this protectionist mindset will have far-reaching consequences for the sub-Saharan area, exacerbating energy poverty in the region. In the short term, attempts to bring in low-cost technologies to rural communities will face more hurdles, with government regulations, import restrictions, and limited financing options for entrepreneurs and NGOs. The lack of new options will inevitably lead to increased use of traditional sources of energy, primarily biomass, but also to a lesser extent fossil fuels. This will result in little or no improvement on the fundamental issues blighting the region. Deaths due to smoke inhalation will continue to rise, illiteracy will remain high, and healthcare will not improve. Poverty levels over the next 5 years will remain the same. In the medium term, we see rising unemployment levels due to increased protectionism. Energy scarcity will lead to continued deficiencies in agricultural production. Reduced competition from imports will lead to domestic monopolies and rising prices. The monopolist political clout, combined with less foreign oversight in the region and rising illiteracy, will lead to absolute power for the ruling parties at the expense of ever deteriorating governance and corruption. Armed conflict is expected to rise. All of this will lead to a very hostile social and economic climate, further diminishing foreign investments. Which energy company would want to invest in such a climate? In the long term, political instability will promote dictatorial regimes. Armed conflict will become commonplace. Smoke inhalation will become the leading cause of death. Child mortality and malnutrition will be on the rise. GDP will be reduced even further. Need for aid will be very high but insufficiently given. The destructive effect of droughts will lead to widespread famine and death of livestock and people. Many of these issues could have been alleviated with better availability of energy.
This could all be different in a scenario in which governments and businesses were open and cooperative. In such a world, events could unfold in 3 stages. In the first stage, innovation could be based primarily upon financing methods. Solar cookers and solar reading lights will be commercially available, made accessible by creative payment plans. Solar cookers will reduce smoke inhalation deaths caused by kerosene lamps and wood stoves. Boiling water to kill bacteria is also now possible. Solar reading lights will provide the opportunity for children to have longer study hours, as they can read at night with cheap light sources. The reduced necessity to search for firewood could give people additional productive time and alleviate pressure on the local environment. These changes could make the local population comfortable with financing plans and interaction with foreign companies. The visible benefits from new sources of electricity will pave the way for further advancements in the next stage. Stage 2 would occur 5 to 10 years from now. Building on Stage 1 changes, villages could now pool resources using a financing structure based on community ownership to create local energy infrastructure. These game-changing technologies in this scenario could be less expensive solar with compressed air energy storage, solid oxide fuel cells, oxygen fuel cells, and advanced metal-air battery systems. This, combined with the previous game-changing financing mechanisms, will enable the communities to have in-home power systems. These local changes could enable adult literacy programs from international organizations to be more effective. Women will have more free time, enabling them to receive basic nursing training. Communication tools could be easily and relatively cheaply recharged. The increasingly connected population can begin to become more politically informed, putting increased pressure on government for fair and transparent political systems. The success of early financing models paves the way for more microfinance institutions to stimulate micro-businesses in the area. This financing, combined with the access to electricity, makes these businesses a viable economic alternative to agriculture. In Phase 3, from 10 to 20 years out, the expanding micro-businesses will need and can afford large electricity generation systems, potentially creating connections between local villages. The game-changing technologies in this scenario are third-generation solar, smart microgrids, and produced biomass. The increased productivity from the energy systems and the villages themselves will transform the economy from an internal production and consumption model to selling outside of the local region. Small industries will emerge from these incremental advances, creating trade and communication. These changes will ultimately improve the local systems and expand the economy, with production from villages representing an increasing share of national GDP. At the end of Phase 3, the increased collaboration between villages and an emerging middle class will improve social conditions. The increased social openness could lead to a more representative government. Such a transition could occur through a peaceful, gradual transition, or potentially more dramatic regime change. As we can see, the different scenarios produce drastically different outcomes for the Sub-Saharan African population. In an environment where people are open to globalization, the outlook could be very positive, and new resources could be available in new ways to the population. From there, it is up to the inhabitants to reap the benefits of those resources. In an isolationist scenario, the resources will not be available, and positive outcomes are therefore unlikely.